This question from the audience is for Julie. Your campaign ads say you are, quote, fiscally conservative, unquote. Please define that, as your votes in the legislature threw us into a huge deficit.
I don't believe they ever use the word conservative. I think they say fiscally responsible, but maybe it's somebody else's ad about me. I don't know.
Well, I'm reading from the audience.
Yeah, I know you are. I know you are. Anyways, I view myself as adhering to fiscal responsibility. In terms of my actions at the legislature, I voted numerous times against party initiatives from my side of the aisle to raise taxes. My entire first 2 terms, I did not vote for one single bill that raised a tax. I voted and supported the 2008 transportation bill, because we were long overdue for transportation funds in this state. That is the bill, moreover, that funded the Stillwater, the St. Croix River crossing. So whether it was Kathy Lomer when she ran against me previously, who chastised me for supporting that gas tax, but then said she was a big proponent of the Stillwater St. Croix River crossing, you can't have it both ways. That's how we paid for it. That's how we are paying for it. So things that are evidence-based, like that transportation bill, that the business group supported, that had bipartisan support, that all the evidence pointed to that we needed those funds to have a solid transportation infrastructure going forward, I gladly support. In terms of the other aspects of the fiscal responsibility, I have become one of the go-to people, I became one of the go-to people within the Health and Human Services finance area to be sent to find hundreds of millions of dollars of cuts in the budget. I did it so well in our first budget deficit, they handed me a couple programs and said, we need tens of millions of dollars here, work with the groups, work with the evidence, find the money, and I did. I did that in the dental program, saved us over $50 million a year going forward. The next year, because of that success, they said, find us more this time. And so I was sent back to the drawing board to redesign programs, to start from scratch, to build the budget in order to save our state money.
Next question.
You didn't get to respond to this. Oh.
Do you want to respond, here? The question was to her.
Yeah, that's okay. I'll go the next
one. But if you want to rebut or say something, go ahead.
Right. Go ahead.
We're trying to find truth here. Okay, then you're next for this question.
Okay.
Do we live in a society we can't afford, or do we just don't want to pay for it? Do we live in a society that we can't afford, or do we just don't want to pay for it? From the audience.
Who asked this question?
No, they have immunity.
Yeah, okay, they're anonymous. We do live in a society that we can afford, but again, we have to have the people working who can afford to pay for it. And I'm sure everybody would like everything for free, but that's not. I don't think that's at the core of who we are as people here in the state of Minnesota. We do want to be up and out there and working and be a productive member of society. But again, it's going to go back to my whole spiel from the get-go. We have to help our small businesses, help our businesses here in the state of Minnesota, help them create jobs. And once the people have jobs and a stable income and money coming in, they can afford to stay in their houses, afford to take a trip, afford to go to the grocery store. That's what we need to do here. And I do want to add one thing. Former Representative Bunn says she did vote 98% of her time. 98% of her votes were with her party, and 2% of the time she got a pass. So I'm not sure where the votes were that were bipartisan, but 98% of the time she voted straight party line.
Back to, do we live in a society? You want to respond to that?
Yeah. Well, first of all, respond on the 98%. I've never seen such a number, so I have no idea. It certainly didn't feel like that because I got the ire of my party on numerous occasions for my votes against some of their leading positions. But in terms of the issue of whether we can afford it or we just we have growth in certain areas that we just can't afford. Currently, both at the national and state level, The entitlement programs, particularly for the elderly and disabled, that's what it is at the state level, are growing so rapidly, I do not believe we can forward them in their current forms. So currently at the state level in the last decade, the first part of the decade, our health and human service budgets were growing at 14 to 15% per year, 30% over a biennium. More recently, we've gotten it down, it's come down to about 6 or 7% growth rate a year. We do not project any kinds of economic growth rates or growth rates in productivity or in wages that are in that range in any way whatsoever. Thus, we cannot afford, those are not sustainable rates of growth in those kinds of programs. So our real challenge in going forward is how do we restructure what we do, how do we re-incentivize people and their own families and their own lives to plan for their own futures more effectively. Just this week, the governor and Lieutenant Governor Prentice Solom announced and unveiled a new program in the state, basically oriented, called Own Your Own Future. It's going to have public service announcements, education initiatives, work in communities, work in workplaces, to basically get the boomers and the younger than boomers to plan for their future, to make sure they have long-term care insurance, to make sure they adequately plan for their own retirement, because it is not the case that state or federal governments will be able to support the number of people who will become eligible for Medicaid and nursing home care cost share if they do not do that. The numbers, the math just doesn't add up. So we cannot afford the future that's currently embedded in state and federal laws, and we will have to redesign, and we will have to restructure, and we will have to scale back people's expectations about what the public sector does versus what they will have to do in their private lives.
That concludes our forum. We'll ask the candidates to use about 2 minutes to sum up anything they want to say about their candidacy and why they want you to vote for them. And I think, Karen, you went first, didn't you?
No, I didn't.
Yeah, I went first on the intro, so.
Okay, so is that fair? Okay.
I went. You went first on the intro. I'll go.
Okay.
Okay.
You get the last
Flip a coin
word.
That's right. Yeah, that's right.
You get the last word, which is always a good thing. So.
Okay, please, 2 minutes.
Okay. Okay, well, thank you again to the Boutwell's Policy Committee for holding this forum. I just want to point out that what I stand for as we go forward is, first of all, a truthful explanation to the public about what we're facing. You heard in that last answer about our entitlement programs at the state and federal, a very truthful answer. We can't afford them. We will have to redesign them. We will have to change people's expectations. In terms of the state budget, you heard from me a very truthful explanation about we don't really have a surplus. In fact, we're going to have a deficit going forward. Moreover, we're going to continue to have structural deficits because of this issue I alluded to. The aging of our population is increasing demands on services. At the same time, more aging and more retiring in our population is going to have income and sales tax flatten out in this state and start to bend down. So there'll continue to be a gap here. So we'll continue to struggle with how are we going to resolve that. It has to be a combination of redesign, changing expectations, being more efficient, cuts in the short term, and then we will have to modernize our tax system to make sure it's a more stable revenue source going into the future. And I mentioned a variety of studies that recommend ways to do that. As I said, my bipartisan work, the effectiveness of my work, is illustrated in the kinds of organizations that have endorsed me in my races. Endorsements that came after I actually served and produced a record, both a voting record and achievement record. Business organizations, labor organizations, conservation organizations, Guardian of Small Business Award twice, 2008, 2010, largely because of my voting record on taxes and my work on flexible healthcare products for small businesses. And I was a founding member of the Small Business Caucus in the House, bipartisanly, to listen to small businesses, bring them into the state capital, address their specific concerns and challenges, and craft legislation to meet their specific needs, which we did when I was there. I also co-authored, streamlining of regulation initiatives as well. Thank you for your time. If you need more information, go to my website at www.juliebunn.com.
Karen?
Thank you, and I too would like to thank Boutwell's for sponsoring this. We really appreciate it to get our message out there. There's definitely a big difference in the two candidates here, and that's up to the people of our district to decide who they want to be your next state senator, and I hope you vote for me. The clear difference is I was born and raised in the state of Minnesota. Former Representative Bunn was born, raised, and educated in the liberal state of California. I have real life business experience, and I think that's very, very important. I wrote a book that analyzed the financial statements of publicly traded companies. I read books by Peter Lynch, and I became a huge follower of Warren Buffett, even going to Omaha to his shareholders meeting to maybe through osmosis I could learn something. And what I learned was that the most important thing in running a company is having no debt. And why the state isn't running our government like a business and not carrying debt was always baffling to me. So that is a very, very big difference. Former Representative Bunn was in the legislature, took a $1.8 billion surplus and turned it into a $6.8 billion deficit. As the legislator's only economist, she should have known that balancing a budget was a very important thing to get a handle on. I also have a track record of getting things done, and I'm very, very involved in this community, not just because I was running for office. I didn't know I was running for office until June 5th, and I've been very involved in many nonprofit organizations here right in this community, and helping small businesses by giving them a platform to advertise their events through the radio station Karin Housley Show. And I'm also endorsed by the Minnesota Chamber of Commerce. In former Representative Bunn's first two races, she was endorsed by the Minnesota Chamber of Commerce, and she isn't during this race. So after her work in the legislature, they've decided not to endorse her and to endorse me. I'm also endorsed by the NRA, Voices of Conservative Women, and the Minnesota Farm Bureau. I do look forward to your vote, and if you want more information, it's housleyforsenate.com. Thank you.
I'd like to thank the audience. And that ends our forum. Thank you.